All right, if you've just tuned in, you have just heard from Police Chief Scott Thurmond talking about the shooting of two Birmingham firefighters this morning. Thurmond saying that shooting happened around 8:30 this morning inside of Fire Station 9, saying that those firefighters were seriously injured. They have been transported to UAB Hospital. Seriously hurt. We don't know their condition at this time. Thurmond saying that the shooters or possible shooters are still at large, but probably one of the most disturbing things to come out of this news conference is Chief Thurmond saying that it's possible that those firefighters may have been the victims of a targeted attack. The Chief Thurmond saying that he doesn't know what the possible motive might have been. You know, typically we would think police officers would be more in line for being targeted by shooters, but in this case, Chief Thurmond says he believes that this was a targeted attack, saying that there were altogether 3 firefighters that were inside of Fire Station 9 this morning around 8:30 when this happened. 2 of them wounded, the other not hurt as a result of this. I'm saying that this is pretty typical for the fire station to be open at that time of the day, saying that the firefighters were going about their normal routine, doing their daily checks on the fire engines, and also that typically fire stations are open so that if people need help or perhaps blood pressure checks, he mentioned, is one of the things that they do there, or maybe somebody's not feeling well and that's an easy place for them to get to. So not at all unusual that the fire station would be open or that the firefighters would be there that time of the morning. But once again, if you're just tuning in, we are talking about the shooting of 2 Birmingham firefighters this morning around 8:30 inside Fire Station 9. If you're not familiar with the area, we're taking a look. This is a live picture right now, just after that news conference just wrapping up with the police chief. This is on 27th Street North. This is just north of Top Golf, if you're wondering where this area is located. And Chief Thurmond saying at this time they don't have any good information in terms of a suspect. So there is no BOLO right now, and they don't have much information for the public to go on as far who they should be looking for. But he did say that he does not necessarily believe that the community is in danger because he believes that this was a targeted attack on these particular firefighters. But he does believe that there's possible that someone in the community might know something, may have seen something in the aftermath of this shooting, that they might have more information, and they will ask that you, if you have that information, to please contact the police department, call Crime Stoppers. You can remain anonymous that way. Also mentioning that they are in the process of trying to determine if there were any cameras inside of the fire station that may have caught this incident when it happened. Also, I'm sure looking around some of perhaps homes or other businesses in that area to see if anyone else might have some surveillance footage that they can go upon. But once again, this is a very unusual situation. 2 Birmingham firefighters shot this morning. We are told they are in serious condition, transported to UAB Hospital, and that is where they're being treated this morning. We have a couple of crews that are on the scene that are working to gather more information. Unfortunately, we know that the shooters or shooter, we don't know how many actually. That's another detail that we're kind of missing right now. But whoever is responsible for this possibly targeted attack, still on the run. Police looking for them actively. We don't have any suspect information to share with you at this time. But I guess one of the things that perhaps is comforting that came out of that news conference is police saying that they don't believe necessarily that there is any danger to the general public in the area, because they believe that this may have been a targeted attack on those 2 particular firefighters. And we're seeing there, there's still a pretty active scene around Fire Station 9 there. This all happening at 8:30 this morning, so I guess we're now a little more than an hour since this has happened. So they're really in the initial stages of that investigation, and you can still see there we see probably one of the detectives there. We see gloves on, probably gathering some information. I know that I have been a reporter for many years, and I can only think of one other time that I've actually covered a story involving a firefighter being shot on a scene somewhere, and that in that particular case, it turned out that the firefighter was not the actual target. So as Chief Thurmond was saying, that this is kind of unusual to believe that someone may have targeted firefighters at their place, where their workplace. So this is pretty much a workplace shooting. They were getting ready for their day, preparing for their typical day. And there we see, it looks like perhaps these are some other firefighters that are at that station that appear to be talking with, I see Chief Thurmond there in the background and another Birmingham police officer there. And it looks like they're all kind of perhaps gathering to kind of get an idea, perhaps maybe where that suspect, maybe the direction that they went after this shooting occurred. Once again, we don't even know if we're looking for a vehicle or how many people. We just know that this is a situation in which, you know, it could be a while before it's resolved in terms of having someone in custody, just because Chief Thurmond said himself that they just don't have a lot of information to go on so far in terms of who they might be looking for. I did want to mention that as far as we know at this point, in terms of those firefighters that are being treated at the hospital, I believe Chief Thurmond said there in that news briefing just moments ago that they are both males, but other than, you know, their tenure with the fire department or any other information, we don't really have that at this particular time. But the message to the community right now, particularly there in that area around Fire Station 9, the Chief Thurmond says they do believe that it's possible that someone might have some information about what happened this morning, what led up to the shooting. And if you do have that information, they're asking you to please call the police department and that you can remain anonymous, and they will take that information from you and add that to their investigative toolbox. So clearly, this is just a very unusual situation. Even Chief Thurmond saying that he was very surprised that typically when we're talking about public safety officials who might be targeted by someone in this way, typically it would be police officers. And we have seen that in many instances across the country where police officers, for example, have been ambushed while on the job, but not necessarily in terms of firefighters. So we're going to continue to stay here and monitor this scene. We have Maddie Davis, who is there, as well as Patsy Douglas. Those are two of our WBTM 13 news reporters who are working to gather information, and we are going to try and bring that to you live on the air as soon as we know more. And also that will be on our WBTM 13 app as well. So we are just continuing to try and work our phones in the newsroom as well to try and get you more details about what is happening in this situation. And it doesn't appear right now that we can get a whole lot to go on as far as where they are in their investigation, because it appears right now they're still perhaps just getting some witness testimony from, or, you know, just these other firefighters, trying to talk with them and glean what they may have seen or heard earlier this morning when this all happened. And once again, we're just about 9:48 this morning, and if you're just tuning in and wondering what you're looking at, I'm going to go ahead and give you another quick recap of what we've been following for you here. Breaking news situation here in Birmingham, where two Birmingham Fire and Rescue firefighters were shot this morning. It happened around 8:30 this morning at Fire Station 9. It happened inside the fire station. That is what information that we learned from Police Chief Thurmond, that it happened inside the fire station, and that at this point in time, they do believe that those firefighters were targeted. And so that's a very disturbing information for us to find out. They know that the shooters are still on the loose, or possible shooters. I should clarify that at this point in time, we really don't know if it's more than one shooter. And they were doing their routine morning checks. And I think we have our reporter there on the scene getting ready to get in front of the camera and give us a little bit more information, because she's actually there. She's been able to see more than we have from our camera shot. We have kind of a limited vantage point. If she's ready, let's go ahead and talk with Maddie Davis there live on the scene. Maddie, we just heard from Chief Thurmond. What else are you hearing out there?
Well, obviously, Carla, a lot of people out here concerned about what happened this morning. Two firefighters shot here at Station 9. We have that confirmed from Chief Thurmond, who we just heard from. He is really concerned about why someone would target these firefighters. Right now, they do not know who is responsible for this. I'll step aside so you can get a good look at police investigating this. But right now, they don't know who is responsible for this. They are looking for suspects, but they don't believe the community is in immediate danger. They believe that this actually might have been a targeted attack. Of course, Chief Thurmond wondering why anybody would want to target Birmingham firefighters, but this happened around 8:30 this morning. Those firefighters, 2 male firefighters, got into work around 7. Right now, they are in serious condition, taken to UAB Hospital. Again, police looking for who is responsible right now. They say the shooter or possibly shooters went in through the back door, but that often these fire stations remain unlocked so that they're accessible to the community anyways. Again, just everyone out here really wondering why someone would target firefighters. Birmingham firefighters, 2 Birmingham firefighters shot this morning. Suspects still at large right now. Police investigating why they would do this, where those suspects are, who is responsible for this. We will, of course, give you more information. We're staying on scene out here to figure out the latest. Back to you, Carla.
All right, thanks, Maddie. I'd like to ask you a question, Maddie, just for people that are tuning in right now, because we can see very little from our vantage point here in the studio of what's behind you. I think I see a home there on the corner across the street from the fire station. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a better descriptor of what's in that area, what's around the fire station? Are there more homes? Where might police have to look in terms of their investigation?
Well, Carla, if you know anything about Norwood, you know this is a historic neighborhood here in Birmingham. A lot of older homes, a lot of families that live over here near this area. We also have an apartment complex across the street, a convenience store right over here near the fire station right there, a church. So a lot of people around here, and like I've said, we've seen many people out around the scene here just asking us what is going on this morning. I spoke to a few people. I asked if they had heard or seen anything. They told me that they did not hear any gunshots, that they came out as soon as they saw all the police vehicles out here this morning. But we are working to figure out more information for them, because they are just as concerned, the citizens here, as the police officers that we spoke to about the condition of these firefighters.
I'm sure that they're probably kind of keeping you guys in the media in a contained area there. And I see the crime tape there behind you. Can you tell us anything about how large of a perimeter that there is in that area? How much of that area are police contained to in terms of their investigation?
Well, this is a pretty spread out scene here on 12th Avenue North. We're right at the intersection with 20th Street North, again here in the historic Norwood neighborhood. We got about a blocked off here until past Station 9 over there. So they are keeping us contained right here. We are about as close as we can get to the fire station right now. But of course, they do need to investigate this, because they don't know where the people who are responsible for this are right now. They're looking for them. And they don't believe the community is in any immediate danger right now. They have reasons to believe that this was actually a targeted attack. Someone entering into the fire station early this morning to shoot those firefighters. So they're telling the community that they shouldn't worry too much, but they are looking for those suspects, possibly 2 or multiple suspects, maybe just one. They didn't tell us specifics on that, but they did say there could be more than one person who is responsible for this.
Maddie, I guess one last question that I wanted to ask you in terms of, you mentioned that that's kind of a residential area, a historic residential area. Are any of the streets blocked off in terms of, I imagine, are they trying to keep traffic away from that area at this point?
Right now, 12th Avenue North is blocked off here for about a block, but not really causing any traffic issues right now. People are easily able to get around this by taking another street. So that's the only street they really have blocked off right now. But hopefully that they will give us more information and get the street back open, but doesn't look to be causing any problem to the public. Just still talking to a few people over here. They did say there were some other people inside the fire station this morning that saw this. I believe maybe 3 or 4 people that they've been talking to get more information about what happened this morning. So they'll have that blocked off until they're done with their investigation.
All right, thanks, Maddie. We appreciate your reports. If you are just now tuning into WBTM 13, our time right now is 9:55. We have been covering a very tragic situation in Birmingham this morning. We know that 2 firefighters were shot inside the fire station at Fire Station 9. It's happening around 8:30 this morning. We know that they're being treated at UAB Hospital right now. Maddie Davis has been there on the scene for us for at least the last hour. She is working to gather more information about what happened. We shortly, probably about 15 minutes ago, heard from Chief Scott Thurmond, who held a news conference and tried to update us on the situation there and gave us just a few more details about what led up to this. But right now we really don't have a lot to go on other than it happened at 8:30 this morning, just as those firefighters were beginning their work day, as they were doing some of those checks that they do around the fire station. And that's when we're told that 2 of those firefighters were shot, and the suspect or suspects are still at large at this hour. Police are telling us that they believe that this is possibly a targeted attack. They don't have a reason for that attack, but at this point they say that they don't necessarily believe that the general public in that area is in danger, but obviously still probably need to be on your P's and Q's, on the lookout for anything suspicious in that area. Also, as Maddie mentioned, that is kind of a residential area. It's over near Top Golf. It's the historic Norwood community, and there are people, she says, right now that are walking around the neighborhood. So police did say in that when Chief Thurmond gave us that update, did say that they believe that it's possible that someone may have seen something, and they're asking if you did see something around the time that this happened, 8:30 this morning, that would you please call the police department. You can remain anonymous at that number there, right there on your screen right now. Crime Stoppers at 205-254-777. And if you call that number, you can remain anonymous, and police will take that information and add that to their investigation. They're in their preliminary stages. Maddie mentioning that it appears that they have a pretty a large perimeter there in terms of where they're looking. We've seen them this morning talking to a lot of the firefighters that are probably perhaps arriving to work a little bit later shifts, because as Chief Thurmond told us that there were only about 3 firefighters that were inside the building at the time that this happened at 8:30 this morning. 2 of those firefighters wounded as a result. And so we are kind of waiting to see if we can have any update on information in terms of what may have happened before this, what possibly led up to this, any reason that those firefighters might have been targeted, as at this point, that's exactly what Chief Thurmond says he believes happened. I want to mention also that the chief said that he didn't have a lot of credible information about a possible suspect. And so that is why they said that at this point there is no BOLO alert out, which would typically be the case sometimes in an instance like this if they had a good suspect description, more suspect information. But he says there really isn't that right now, so they don't have a whole lot to go on. They were also saying that it's extremely troubling that firefighters would be targeted. I mean, for many reasons. Among them is that fire stations are normally open. They're normally open to the public, to if you're, in distress or, need assistance. Those are normally places, that's where we, for example, we tell women, that you can drop off a baby there. That's, typically considered a safe spot in a community would be the fire station. So that is definitely something that Chief Thurmond says is very troubling about this situation. And just once again want to reiterate that any information that you might have to please contact Crime Stoppers, and they will that will be very helpful to them. I should mention that Chief Thurmond at this point said that they were not sure, or they're looking into determining if there were any cameras in the area inside the fire station when this happened that may have gotten any information about a suspect or, been able to see any of the events that led up to the shooting. And I imagine they're probably also at this point doing some door knocking, trying to talk to some of the folks in that area just to see if any of them might have captured anything on any of their cameras. A lot of people right now we know have cameras in their homes. And so we are going to continue to stay on top of this story. We have a newscast coming up in about an hour. And so we will bring you any new developments. Once again, a very tragic situation in Birmingham. 2 firefighters shot in serious condition at UAB Hospital. The shooter still on the loose. As we learn more information, we'll bring that to you live here on the air as well as on the WBTM 13 app.